Ferrari Testarossa, a brilliant name and a byword for excess and iconic styling. Well, the new 849 Testarossa definitely has the excess down. This thing has 1,036 brake horsepower and it costs from £407,000. As for the styling, well, when this car was unveiled, there was a collective A on the internet, followed by quite a lot of WTFs. But let's not worry about that today, because today is all about driving. We're going to drive the standard car on the road and then the Assetto Fiorano car on the track to discover if Ferrari have moved the game on from the unloved SF90, if this thing can stand comparison with a Lamborghini Revuelto, and if it's worthy of that iconic Testarossa name.
For maybe the first time since the days of the 348 and, ironically, the old Testarossa, Ferrari finds itself in a crunch period. The market rejected the SF90, the brilliant 296 isn't bulletproof in terms of residuals, the Purosangue is struggling, so basically the 849 Testarossa needs to mark the start of a turnaround. But so far, the aesthetics are proving divisive, to say the least. Under the skin though, well, you sense Ferrari has pulled out all the stops.
Whenever you come on a launch, particularly a Ferrari launch, the insight you get into how much detail work there goes into a car like this is incredible. So it's 849, if you don't know where that name comes from, it's 8-cylinder engine, obviously this is a V8, and then it's 499cc per cylinder. So it's basically a 4-litre twin turbocharged V8. This is the Assetto Fiorano car. Now traditionally that is quite a hardcore option to tick because it gives you the fixed rate Multimatic spool valve dampers. But for the first time with this car you can get the extra aero and the lightweight is 30 kilos lighter with that Fiorano pack, but still specify the MagnaRide suspension with the nose lift. It's 42,115 pounds I think. You lose 30 kilos, more downforce. You get these twin wings which are a feature element of the standard car as well, but now they're separated and they've got more of a flick on them. This is the car that produces 415 kilos of downforce at 250 kilometers per hour. They say the standard car is between 20 and 30% less than that, so that headline figure is for a Fiorano car. I'm still undecided on the looks. There's so much going on, but when they showed me a picture of this car next to the 512S and 512M race car from the 70s, it makes more sense. If you look at that, you see where they're coming from with the design. Okay, the engine. So, like I say, 4-litre twin-turbo V8. It's odd to have the F80 as a V6, the 296, that lovely little Revy V6, and then this car, which is sort of in the middle of the two, with a twin-turbo V8. So, new turbochargers, biggest turbo ever fitted to a Ferrari road car. More boost pressure, but they claim that the lag is actually lower, and that's due to exhaust manifolds, intake, but obviously you've got the hybrid element as well, which can fill in. They call it turbo lag compensation. So effectively we've got the engine and gearbox here. In between the two, there's an electric motor, MGUK they call it, which is to really for that turbo boost compensation, turbo lag compensation. They say it just makes it smoother in every driving mode. Whether you're in wet mode, it makes the car more progressive, or when you've got it dialed all the way up, it gives you the maximum response. In the front, we have two electric motors for the front axle. So this is four-wheel drive, like the F80. It creates torque vectoring, which they can play all sorts of tunes with this car. Now with the SF90, that was like the first version of this before the F80 came along, and the car did feel a little bit inconsistent. Something like a Lamborghini Revuelto just feels rear-wheel drive effectively, and the front axle almost, you don't feel its actuation. That SF90 was much more busy. You'd slide the car and then suddenly the front axle would start doing strange things. They say they've smoothed that out a huge amount for this car. But yeah, it's just an incredibly detailed, every little thing. The front intake, there's 18% more airflow through there. Through these, there's 30% more flow to the intercoolers, plus it's separated out, so the cooling for the rear brakes is through this part as well. The rear brakes completely different, calipers, discs, the whole lot. The front brakes are now 410mm with extra cooling. There's triple vortex generators on the underbody that create these vortices and just energize the air effectively to give the car more stability. It is a stunningly comprehensive job, but the best thing of all is inside because buttons are back, finally. I guess the first thing to say when we get in here, we'll get onto the buttons, that's just an immediate win, isn't it? But the 849 Testarossa is still an aluminium chassis car. This is not a carbon tub, and you don't get that beautiful low down, super low feeling that you get in a McLaren, for example. So the driving position is not as good, it's as simple as that. For a car at this level, up against other super and hypercars at this sort of price, which all have a carbon tub, I mean, you can make your own mind up. Ferrari say they don't need a carbon tub, but it's telling that the F80 does have a carbon tub, so it is better technology. That's just the way it is. It's stiffer and lighter. Everything else in here I think is actually really, really cool. I love the way they've moved this gear selector up onto this floating sort of binnacle. Everything feels minimalist. The tunnel's really low. So it's a really cool environment. And as usual, the steering wheel is busy, but it's busy in a good way now because we have buttons. So there's an engine start stop button, which feels tactile and nice. We've got the Manettino, very familiar if you've ever been in a Ferrari or seen a Ferrari. We have wet mode, sport, race, CT off, and then hold it until it chimes and you get ESC off. So then you're flying completely solo. As well as that, along the bottom, there is still some haptic stuff where you can choose electric drive, hybrid, performance, which is for consistent performance, and then qualifying mode, which gives you the full Monty for as many laps as it can muster, probably about 2 or 3. But yeah, the environment's just very, very nice. Everything on here much easier to operate when there's buttons. I still suspect I need to go out on the road. We haven't done that yet, and play around with Apple CarPlay. I still think it's going to be a bit trickier than just operating some sort of touchscreen, because you're messing around on the menus here. And CarPlay is obviously designed just to press buttons rather than flick through menus. But yeah, the view out is really, really cool. The big gaping intakes are great. You can see those twin wing concept through the rear as well. So it's a cool environment, and I'm delighted that Ferrari had listened and brought some buttons back. I wouldn't say it's inspiring and crazily out there like a Lamborghini, but this is a different sort of car, obviously lower centre of gravity, etc. So it's a serious thing, this 849 Testarossa.
Right, it's time to put all that theory to the test. Now, time is always tight on a launch, but even more so when there's weather closing in. Heavy forecast rain meant Ferrari elected to condense all track activity into the morning session rather than splitting the journalists into 2 groups. Anyway, the point is I get just a few laps to get a handle on the car, and I have to follow an instructor at something approaching qualifying pace. So here are first impressions as they happen in real time.
Okay, so here we go. We are in qualifying mode, which is good for 5 or 6 laps of Fiorano, so should be good for my little stint round here. 1 lap of the ring. Track's a little bit damp in a couple of places, but not terrible. And I am in CT off mode. So what I'm looking for is a more natural feel than the SF90, which could do some strange things with the front axle. This immediately feels more natural. It's got a little kick on the exit of corners, which is great, because it's still 820 horsepower going to the rear wheels, which is a lot. And then the front helps out, drags you out of the corners, but there's just a lovely little sense that the car's very much rear driven. Brakes feel really, really nice. There's a bit of a longer pedal than you get on something like a Porsche. Slippery through there. But the progression is good, and you can't, on the track at least, feel that crossover between electric regeneration and the friction brakes. I'd say the fluidity feels much improved over SF90. The gearbox has got a bit of that F80 punch which is really lovely. Can brake so late actually. Doesn't feel heavy, doesn't feel compromised by the four-wheel drive, certainly not driving quickly. Slightly odd behaviour on the way into corners if you're on the brakes. But overall feels actually pretty good. I love that gear change. Love the little sting in the tail on corner exit. And the engine, it's not sonorous like that little V6 in the 296, or as just wild as the F80's V6, which really does sound mad. But no arguing with the performance. It absolutely rips, this thing. Always seems to have more power than grip, so if you want to slide the car, you can. It's got that lovely Ferrari predictability. They just do it so well.
So far, so very good. So let's disable the ESC and see what happens when the 849 Testarossa is fully unleashed.
Just starting to rain again. I turn the traction control off. Let's see if it feels predictable when it slides. Yeah, pretty good. Wary through this quick corner with no support. But it's not holding any, not hiding any vices, the electronics. Lovely the way it can attack the turn-in. Easy to control. Going at a pace that is quicker than you probably ideally would when you're just playing around. Again, the front axle intervention does feel a bit more natural than SF90 when it's sliding. Not as pure and natural as 296 in that regard, but it's an overwhelming experience driving this thing quickly on a track that you don't know, but the shock and awe is definitely there. Okay, so the big ticks on the track. Gearbox response, absolutely mega. More fluid than SF90. Doesn't feel big and heavy. I still think there's a question mark over this four-wheel drive system, just when you want to drive a little bit more freely over the limit, just for fun rather than just pure sort of qualifying performance. But for a four-wheel drive with an electric front axle, it's pretty cool. Not as seamless maybe as Revuelto, but it feels more powerful at the same time. So I don't think it feels quite as natural as the Lambo, but it feels like it's got more power to help you out on corner exit. So pretty cool thing. Shockingly quick, and having to follow someone, you have to follow an instructor. And really when I'm talking, I would rather drive a little bit slower. But there we go. Can't drive too slowly with these boys around.
The 849 is seriously impressive on the track then. A big leap forwards, outrageously capable and very entertaining too. Every detail re-examined and refined, but plenty of drama left in the mix. It weighs 1,570 kilos dry with lightweight options, 200 kilos less than Lamborghini claimed for the Revuelto, and you sense the advantage. Next up, the road and the rain. So much rain.
Okay, so that was pretty fraught at the track and pretty wild, I have to say. But what about on the road? Well, I was pretty skeptical about this car when I arrived here in a lot of ways. Never really bonded with the SF90, wasn't sure about the looks, and I wasn't convinced that Ferrari recognised why the SF90 never quite gelled. However, I think it's fair to say I was wrong, because I've enjoyed this more and more as I drive it, as I cover the miles. It's started to rain typically just when we strap the cameras on, but that's actually telling in itself, because this car is a non-Fiorano pack car now. So I've got the Magnaride dampers, got Pirelli P0R tyres instead of the 2R Michelins that we had on track. And the SF90 without the Multimatic dampers was a tricky, hard to read car, particularly in wet conditions. Didn't feel cohesive, never filled you with confidence, and this is really opposite. There's a lovely, clean way that this car goes down the road, the way it changes direction, the steering is quick. Ferrari steering is always quick, but it's not too light. It gives you something to push up against. And I think initially, compared to like a 296, this is actually more reassuring. The front end's not quite as responsive, and actually you might even find a tiny bit of understeer in these conditions, but that's fine. You need that when you've got this level of performance on tap all the time. And the car just, the gearbox is phenomenal. The F80, I think it sounds so weird, but my favourite thing about that car was probably the gearbox. And they've definitely brought some of that instant response and punch to this dual clutch, but it doesn't feel fake or engineered. It's just fantastic. The brakes were also superb on track. Once again, that continues onto the road. It's just everything you touch. I talked earlier about details, and you can feel the level of detail they've gone to here. The SF90 was an idea and a concept and a first go, if you like, at getting that right, and then this just ups the ante in every area. It calms the car down, fills it with more feel, and the result is pretty shockingly good, actually. Okay, I've slowed down a bit, not just because the rain is now torrential, which it is, but I want to discuss this engine. The performance is utterly outrageous on the road. This powertrain delivers all the time. There's subtlety to it, but it's big. The performance is big all of the time. But this engine, at low and medium revs, it's not tuneful or musical in any way, shape or form. And when you're just cruising, actually, it can feel a bit almost utilitarian. The noise, the harshness through the structure of the car, it's got nothing like the sense of lightweight, racy, I don't know, just that feel-good tingle that you get from the V6 in the 296, or the absolute insanity and anger of the V6 in the F80. So it's really odd that the V8 is maybe the least convincing engine in the whole Ferrari range. You've got that stunning V12 in the 12-cylindry, and that sweetly musical little gem of a V6. And the heart of this car just doesn't detract from the experience. And when you're going quick, it's angry and it sounds cool, but it's not one of those motors you're going to remember for the rest of your life. Okay, the end of a mega but tricky day here in Spain. We started off with these cars, the Assetto Fiorano, on the track. It was damp but not too bad. Then we headed out to the road, and for once Spain's weather let us down, and now is absolutely hosing it down. I came here pretty cynical about this car, actually, for various reasons. Not a big SF90 fan, and I wasn't sure that Ferrari actually understood why that car didn't come together. But I was wrong. I love driving this on the track. It was so quick, beautiful balance, feels properly wild. And then on the road, it was hooked up, just lovely and fluid, and the gearbox, absolutely fantastic. But I keep having this little nagging doubt in the back of my brain, and that is really the enemy within, the 296. Still over 800 horsepower, rear wheel drive, lighter, feels even more agile and light on its feet, and still faster than you could ever want to go. The 296 and the Speciale put this car in a difficult position. Then you've got Lamborghini Revuelto, which is like proper old school supercar with a V12, but now it's dynamically great as well. And if you want something old school, the feel and feedback of a McLaren 750S is still pretty special. So at this amount of money, I can't quite trigger my brain to think, yeah, this is the car to have. I'm afraid I would probably stick with 296 or Speciale. Fantastic cars. I love what they've done with it, but it's just not the Ferrari that I would have.